AI is great when it comes to the idea of efficiency. The negative aspect of it is that if AI is weaponized, size of the company doesn't matter or industry segment doesn't matter because AI is being used in a manner across all industry segments and across all sizes of risk.
Welcome to the Leader's Edge podcast. I'm Zach Ewell, market analyst and podcast producer at Leader's Edge. In this episode, sponsored by Nationwide, I'm joined by cyber product lead for eRisk, a nationwide company, John Butler. In this episode, we explore how the rapid adoption of AI is reshaping the cyber threat landscape, from expanded attack surfaces and AI-powered threat actors to supply chain vulnerabilities and governance gaps. This conversation circles around businesses, brokers, and underwriters and what they need in order to adapt to these challenges. First, I asked John about how the rapid integration of AI across businesses is challenging the threat landscape, and what new vulnerabilities underwriters need to account for an ever-expanding attack surface.
We've been seeing definitely an increase in the threat landscape by the use of AI. So AI is definitely gone from a niche innovation to a foundational part of how businesses run. And from where I sit as an underwriter, that's a double-edged sword in the way that the same technology driving efficiency is also rewriting the threat model we've underwritten against for the last decade. So there's a few areas that tend to, it's going to expand the threat landscape. And the areas that we're looking at is where AI is embedded by all different types of software and as well as also actual platforms that actually embed the AI into. For example, fraud detection and credit modeling in the financial services embed AI into those software applications. You also see it in diagnostics and triage in healthcare, as well as dynamic pricing in retail, robotics and supply chain forecasting in manufacturing, as well as your contract work in professional services. So when you look at the industry segments that we provide insurance to for cyber liability, when we're insuring against actual security controls and the hygiene there, AI basically expands that across all industry segments, but also amplifies and creates a systemic exposure that traditional cyber frameworks were never designed to address. And when I say amplifies the threat, the attack surface or expands it, it's because the speed at which AI allows for, if you were to weaponize AI to utilize it as a tool to or vehicle to attack, it basically can do it quicker than if it was a human behind the actual attacking from a standpoint of understanding vulnerabilities, trying to look at like what vulnerabilities, what can be exploited, the timing of it amplifies and basically increases a lot faster than if it was an actual human doing the actual attacking through hacking and manipulation of software code.
Then, John takes us through what all this means for current risk controls.
Well, that's a good question. AI went from a cool experiment to running the whole business. And honestly, like I said earlier, it's a double-edged sword. What that means is that it's going to, even though the same tech drives efficiency, what it does though, it allows us then to have to revisit some of the controls that we've hold as basic or just standard with MFA, EDR, as well as your backups. Those still matter, but what's going to be created is that we're going to have to be able to continuously monitor, or the insured is going to have to be monitoring more of those security apparatuses or security controls, so that they're always making sure that they're on top of any sort of patching that's required when it comes to software that they're using, but then also making sure that they're deploying and that they're enabling those security measures, MFA, EDR, across their whole enterprise, and taking note and inventory, or taking inventory into those sorts of controls. Because one of the things that we found out through disclaim experience is that we find that they may be aware that they have MFA that's being enabled and used, but it may not necessarily be verified that it's being used across all of their applications or all of their remote access. And then when that's occurring, that allows potential for a threat actor to have an access point where they may be able to use credentials that they were able to steal or steal through either a phishing event or even through seeing credentials being used that could be bought on the dark web. What they'll do is they'll use those credentials to be able to bypass some of those initial security controls to then get access into the network, where use AI to basically bypass, because the AI's ability to learn and also find other ways to get through certain impediments or hurdles. AI, because of the intelligence, it's going to be able to bypass a lot of the security controls that are already in place.
John takes us through how threat actors are leveraging artificial intelligence to bolster their social engineering skills against their targets.
The clearest trend is that AI has collapsed the barrier to entry for sophisticated attacks. What we're seeing is that AI has enhanced social engineering. That's pretty much been the headline trend in the most recent current news cycle. Social engineering was already a leading cause of cyber incidences, but AI supercharges it with perfectly written phishing, deepfake audio mimicking executives, synthetic identities, personalized lures from scraped data, and real-time conversational fraud. Deepfake enabled phishing, which is video phishing, surged over 1,600% in early 2025, and AI-driven fraud tactics jumped 118% year over year. So that to me tells me that AI is being definitely effectively used, and the way that they're using it is definitely enhancing the social engineering, not only the coverage, but the risk that every entity, every corporate risk is going to have to endure. And a lot of times that all comes down to the human element that social engineering exposes. And so it's going to be interesting as to if there's going to ever evolve anything that's going to be able to counter the AI enhanced tactic used, in the specifics of impersonating or socially engineering any sort of fraud against any company in any industry segment that's available or that's out there in the country. Like I said, AI is great when it comes to the idea of efficiency and the ability to have quality productivity, and allows for the small business to be able to compete in a larger environment, especially if you're competing against larger companies. You have not an advantage, but you're able to compete in a way that maybe you wouldn't be able to if AI didn't exist. That's the positive aspect of it. The negative aspect of it is that if AI is weaponized, size of the company doesn't matter or industry segment doesn't matter, because AI is being used in a manner across all industry segments and across all sizes of risk.
It's no secret that many companies are rushing to adopt AI in order to improve their efficiencies and output. However, John takes us through the different data, regulatory, and operational issues some organizations may expose themselves to when doing this.
The central tension right now is the adoption is massively outpacing the governance around AI, or how insureds or risks should be thinking about it. Enterprise AI adoption is around at 78%, but only a fraction of those companies have mature oversight to match. The gap is actually where the exposure lives. Some of the things that we look at when we look at that gap is what are they doing when it comes to their regulatory exposure, especially sending regulated data to unvetted AI services can trigger regulations like GDPR or HIPAA without anyone knowing it happened. Those are concerns as AI is utilized more and more, and the data that's being utilized and being used in manner that could trigger those regulations. What HIPAA does is it amplifies the fines and penalties when it comes to medical records. That data and within HIPAA, we do see that trend where they utilize that as a way for enforcement, especially when it's an incident that is deemed egregious in the sense that it had an impact, or if there's been, multiple incidences where there's a consistent theme within the security posture in the healthcare space. You start seeing the regulatory enforcement be a little bit more a sense of severe for the purpose of that, so that there's a deterrent for making sure that the healthcare industry and the healthcare entities are actually putting security at the forefront of their priorities. So it becomes the bully pulpit situation around fines and penalties, and trying to make sure that the healthcare industry is making sure that they're providing the best security possible around the information that they're transmitting amongst doctors, patients, and other doctors within the network, and even with your health insurance carriers as well. Like, all that information is being transmitted electronically. That there has to be a standard of care from a security perspective around that data.
Next, John tells us what AI supply chains are and how they create exposure that organizations may not have realized.
This is another good question, and I do think that this kind of is going to lead into kind of the expansion and how critical understanding one's supply chain has an effect. At least it could have a systemic effect. The way I would look at it is that the exposure hiding, it's basically supply chains is basically the exposure that's hiding in plain sight. Almost no one builds their AI from scratch. And so when a company says we use AI, what they really mean is that they're sitting on top of a deep layered supply chain they often can't fully see. So the AI supply chain is more complex than traditional cloud service. So a typical deployment relies on cloud-hosted large language models, third-party training data sets, open source libraries, pre-trained embeddings, and external interface APIs, all layered on top of each other. And so that layering is a danger. It's a single vulnerability or a single compromised vendor can cascade across thousands of insureds simultaneously. So that's the accumulation effect, or the accumulation event, that it resembles cloud concentration risk, but with deeper interdependencies. So with that being said, that's the whole idea with the supply chains. When you think about like software, one of the specific like supply chain risks that I'm looking at and being very cognizant of is the data poisoning aspect. There is a concern that if the AI models were to be compromised, there could be the data poisoning effect where the adversaries will corrupt the training data, so then your outputs are not going to be considered reliable. And that's called indirect prompt injection through the compromised data sources. That's one concern that we would see or could see when it comes to the attack on data that is actually being used for the input-output process when you're talking about the utilization of artificial intelligence.
Finally, John shares how employers and brokers can adapt as AI continues to reshape the risk landscape beneath their feet.
This is another good question. So the good news is that that becoming insurable and becoming resilient are the same project. So there's a five foundational moves every organization should be making today, and a few old habits they need to retire. So one of the things that I try to look at are the five pillars, or what I call the five pillars. Build a formal AI governance framework. So that's defining ownership, policies, and review processes. And then decide who owns the AI risk before something goes wrong. And then also look at inventory all of the AI systems that you may have. You can't secure what you can't see. Under certain regulatory initiatives that are coming online. For example, the European Union AI Act, and inventorying itself is now a compliance requirement under that particular act. Those sorts of measures are going to be coming to the states when the states or the federal government, either one, are going to start legislating, just like they did with consumer information. They're going to start regulating and having and creating statutes that create an environment where they have to have governance around AI usage, or if they are deploying any sort of AI tools, that there's some sort of governance around the language models, or security around those language models that are being used for training, and for the output process when it comes to the input output process of the utilization of artificial intelligence. And so that goes to strengthening data security, as I mentioned, but then also evaluate the third-party AI vendors. So if you're using a third party for purposes of your like language models or for data sets, transparency and contractual protections and security attestations are probably going to be areas that that you're going to have to start evaluating and scrutinize a little bit more than maybe you would have in a more traditional vendor customer relationship when it comes to services that are being provided. And then lastly, implementing a model for security controls, testing vulnerabilities, monitoring drifts, and restrict access to timing and inference when it comes to the actual model or the actual AI technology. That's going to be an area that, from an underwriting perspective, is going to be one of those areas that we're going to have to understand better about our insureds if they are affected in a way because of the fact of their usage of AI. Those are all the things that they're going to have to contemplate depending on where they're at within their organization from an operational standpoint, and how much AI has been deployed and also developed in those workflows or within those work operational processes that where they feel automation or AI can help them be more efficient and more productive. AI presents very similar comparative to silent cyber. Silent cyber was a phrase that we used, I want to say came about 2018, 2019. Industry started to see that cyber was not just a line of business or a risk, but it was actual peril. So it was actual peril that could affect not just not just the cyber liability policy, but also has an effect on property, GL, directors, officers liability, and so forth, crime. And so we saw this cascading of cyber popping up in all the different policies in the property casualty suite or catalog of insurance. AI is going to have to be looked at as the same way. AI is definitely going to be a peril. Artificial intelligence is going to be a peril, not just to the cyber liability policy or a tech E&O policy, but you're going to see it as a peril across all the different P&C policies when AI is being used, or if AI is being deployed in a manner that exposes or presents the risk or exposure that you have to protect against or mitigate against. And so it's going to be interesting as we start looking at the change and evolution as we go towards quantum computing. That's going to be the complete game changer with AI. And AI and quantum computing together in the future will present some interesting outcomes when it comes to how we view security.
That was my conversation with cyber product lead for eRisk, a nationwide company, John Butler. I hope you enjoyed it. For more podcasts, please subscribe or go to leadersedge.com.